Here.
Bush.
Yes.
Jefferson. Here. Peterson. Here. Van Campen.
Here.
And Horn. Investment.
Okay, we'll go to number 3, which is approval of July 18th, 2022 village board meeting minutes. I'll take a motion in a second. Get her on the table. Mike and Amanda. Okay, we got a motion in a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. 4 is public appearances. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items both on and off the agenda. 15 minutes will be provided for this item with 3-minute maximum per speaker. Anybody in the audience like to address the board?
Randy, do you want me to speak now or wait till our section comes
We're
up?
going to wait for your item, okay?
Okay,
All
not a
right.
problem.
Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Tell us your name and your address.
The Oregon Observer. Unfortunately, she's unable to be here due to work conflict. July is Park Recreation Month. I would like to celebrate by advocating for a beautiful sculpture garden park at 249 North Main Street. This park will have walking paths, sculptures, native gardens, old-growth trees, a shelter for gatherings, and a children's creative play area. It will be a unique destination park like none other in Oregon. Some people say we need to sell this land to generate income for the village. I am a physical conservative, and so am I, and I am all in favor of the village making money. However, selling this land will have the opposite effect. Various government officials have remarked that the village overpaid for this land and will not get back the money put in. We may only recoup 1/3 to 2/3 of the amount of the purchase price. That means a developer will get a great deal at taxpayer expense. Why should taxpayers lose several $100,000 to sell off the land? This property is a tax incremental financing TIF district, which means a developer will likely ask for TIF money to finance their development. Rather than taxes going for public services, they would go to pay off the TIF. Other taxpayers would pick up the bill for services like fire, EMS, and schools. In contrast, the sculpture part would be financed with fundraising, volunteers, and business contributors. In addition, parks are known to increase income from communities. Research shows a 5% uptick in property values for homes within 500 feet of the park. Higher home values not only benefit the owners of the properties, but the tax base of local government. Parks also increase tourism and sales at local shops and restaurants. The sculpture park, due to its proximity to our downtown, just a couple of minute walk, will be an economic boon to downtown businesses. That's why over 50 businesses have already endorsed. Parks increase economic transactions for communities. Red Wing, Minnesota started a sculpture park last year with public art in parks and along streets. On the day after Thanksgiving, shops brought in $500,000 in sales, their biggest day in over 20 years of having this event. This is the value of parks, public art, and outdoor activities. They can thrive even during a pandemic. Parks draw businesses and people to community as well. 82% of the corporate executives rated quality of life features like parks as an important factor when choosing a location. Home buyers similarly want to purchase homes close to parks, open spaces, and greenery. City parks and open spaces also improve physical and mental health, reducing medical and insurance costs. For all of these reasons and more, the Sculpture Garden Park will strengthen Oregon's economy. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.
We also have a handout in our packet related to the parks and sculpture park. Anybody else? All right. Next 3 minutes.
My name is Susan Chedovy. I live at 1860 County Road MM in Fitchburg. I have a letter from my son. He was not able to be here because he's working, but I would like to read his letter. I am writing this letter because some people opposing the Sculpture Garden Park have painted the supporters of the park in an unfair, negative light to try to discredit them. I think this is unfortunate and that it contributes to a contentious environment in our community. Oregon has been getting the reputation in Dane County for intolerance when people don't agree. This happens in the newspaper and on Facebook. In fact, people readily comment about the toxic tone of letters to the editor and on Facebook posts. I was doing business in Verona last week when the business owner commented that the Oregon Village Board has the reputation of not listening to its citizens. Citizens, as well as Oregon businesses who have been given a clear vision of the park, are in support of the park. The Village Board needs to listen to them. Toxic behavior discourages involvement in the community. It prevents people from stepping forward with ideas, and it stops them from feeling comfortable about volunteering. People are afraid to put themselves out there because they could get shot down for having new ideas. For example, those who are enthusiastic about creating a beautiful community park in downtown Oregon have been vilified by opponents. They've been called names, their character has been disparaged, and their motives have been questioned. This behavior needs to stop. What has happened to civility and the right to disagree respectfully? A recent example of this negativity appeared in a July 28 Oregon Observer letter. The letter dismissed supporters of the garden park, saying they are just the neighborhood, or they are outsiders, and they're just a few who are being catered to. This makes no sense. How can you be in the neighborhood and an outsider at the same time, unless you think that anyone who disagrees with you is an outsider? The July 28 letter goes on to accuse park supporters of not being transparent with their brochure. Yet, the Friends of Oregon Sculpture Garden was specifically listed on the brochure as the group that produced the material. It also listed the website, where you can see the 200-plus endorsers and over 50 businesses that are supporting the park. That is true transparency. Endorsers come from throughout the area, and their names are listed on the website. This community park would have walking paths, native plants, free public art, a shelter, and a kids' playing area. The park will provide relaxation and enjoyment for village residents while drawing visitors to the downtown businesses. It will be good for families and good for local businesses. Please visit the website and join in an exciting, creative, and beneficial adventure in Oregon. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Give us your name and address, please.
Glenn Petrie, 648 Northwoods Edge. Also like to talk about the sculpture park. I mean, I think it's a nice idea. However, I take issue with basically kind of giving the land away to it. There was talk that, oh, we're never going to recoup the value of it, but I don't see the value in just giving it away. Who's going to pay for its upkeep? who's going to pay for its development? It does have value, and if the village truly believes this is a consideration, it should be put to the village as a referendum to gain village support. I don't think it's something that the village needs to rush into a decision. We've had this land for quite a while now. So waiting for the outcome of the survey that was done last week and exploring that, I think would be very valuable to the community. And let's see what else I have here. In the letter that Ms. Vogler put out, she said that TIF money would be a wash for public services such as police, fire, and that. But at least that wash would cover its expenses, and it wouldn't be an added cost to the village. I think we need to be careful and not make the same mistakes as I feel that we may have made with the baseball park, where all of a sudden, presto magico, we just donated the money for the rest of the park when they hadn't even garnered half of what they were supposed to raise. What else happened here? Yeah, I think that's pretty much covers the points I had. I just think we need to really evaluate it before we just commit to giving another 600,000 or 800,000, whatever we're valuing it at. We spent 1.2 at this point, so thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to 5, which is proclamations and announcements. 5A is upcoming meetings and events in our packet. See if there's any questions. We'll go to 6. Yeah, Phil?
Just a comment, I'm sure Dr. Schroeder, the Park Commission member was going to say it 5.
Okay, thank you for that catch. Anybody else? Yeah, Amanda?
I didn't see the transportation committee on that, just a reminder that the first meeting is August 3rd, 5 o'clock.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Derek?
I'm just going to throw a reminder too that since that fire commission meeting is at 5:30, we represent the report on the planning commission that night. That we'll just have a wait for that.
Sure.
So, bear in mind.
All right, anybody else? Okay. Let's go to 16, which is a report on acquisition costs for 249 North Main Street property. There was a report in our packet. Martin, do we need to? I know Phil requested it.
Right.
Phil?
I would just say that I appreciate very much, and this is exactly what I was looking for. So I appreciate the time putting into that.
Okay. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I just want to add a few thoughts. I think the number's important. I also think that Bill asked the wrong question. The question we should be asking is what can we get for the property if we sell it? We may have spent 1.2 million, but that money, that ship has sailed. Okay? We have committed ourselves, we have already paid interest, we've committed ourselves to pay the rest of it. We cannot prepay those bonds. That's $300,000. The value of the property was $890,000, and from my discussions with people, the majority of the people that are sitting at this table think that we had overpaid for it. A number of people that I've talked to within Oregon think that the village overpaid for that property. It was assessed at $675,000. We purchased it at $890,000. There's been discussion at this table that we would sell a portion of the property and turn part of it into a park. So that will further reduce the value of the property. We're entering a weak real estate market as interest rates go up, which will further depress its sales price. At least one of the staff people that I've talked to in a position to know this believes that the property might bring us $350,000, which is significantly less than the 1.2 million. Just because we valued and overpaid for the property at $8.9 million $890,000 doesn't mean we can sell it for that. I purchased my car for $24,000. The dealer would have very happily have taken $100,000 from me. That doesn't make my car a $100,000 car when I go to sell it. So instead of looking at this as, I mean, yes, the village could gain $350,000, $400,000 for this, but we have to realize that we're also losing $850,000 that once we sell this, that we will never recoup. If this was a business as opposed to a village, this would be written off as a loss, not as, oh gee, we're making money. I think we need to be a little bit more creative on how we look at this property and how it can be used to mitigate our losses. I agree with what the gentleman out there said. There's no reason to rush on this. We currently owe $663,475 for interest and principal on this property over the next 15 years. You work out the math on that, we're paying $44,231 a year for this piece of property for the next 15 years. That works out to $9.83 per piece of property in Oregon. That's what it's adding to the tax bill if you assume that we have roughly 4,500 taxable properties. That's less than the cost of breakfast downtown, one day for the entire year. We shouldn't be in a hurry to get rid of this, to say, oh gee, we got it on our bottom line that we need $350,000, when in the long term it may be far more expensive to just get rid of it. To put this in perspective,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I don't believe Mr. Wunsch's comments are on the agenda.
Mike, how much more you got to go?
a paragraph.
Okay.
To put this in perspective, the village board tonight, in something that is on its agenda, is proposing or planning in its capital improvement project to add village debt that will add $699.50 to everyone's tax bill over the next 5 years. So every year, in 5 years, every year your bill will come in at $699.50, and we're arguing over something that's less than $10. I think there's bigger fish to fry, and I think we need to be more creative with how we're dealing with our finances.
Okay, thank you. All right, I need to go back up. I skipped one here, folks. 6A, which is village administrator's report. So that was in our packet, just didn't want to skip it. If anybody has any questions for Martin on that. All right, let's go on then to 6C, which is report from Assistant Director of Public Works on water utility, TFAS sampling. Jeff, I assume you're going to take it?
Yeah, sure. So we did get an opportunity for DNR to actually do voluntary testing of PFAS, and since it is something that is in all of the news, and really we do get a couple questions a year about this, we did go ahead and participate in that. We are very happy and pleased to report that all 3 wells, we had non-detectable limits, at or below non-detectable limits on all of our wells, which is fantastic news. The tests are in the information, are in there. Lauren's prepared a memo here. You know, we are very proud of the water we serve with the village with, and this is another indication that we're going to be dealing with some of the things that have kind of been showing up in the news and dealing with PFAS and the chemicals that can get into the groundwater.
All right. Anybody have a question? Jeff? No, we're okay for it. Okay, just a report. Yep. Okay. Cash and collection. Point out anything to anybody, or? Any questions? Chance to look at it? Okay, thank you. We'll go to 6E, which is Village Department Head, staff, consultant, comments. Yeah, all right. Chief, you want to go first and then Jeff?
My work is brief.
Oh, mine's done.
Well, yours will take longer. Mine, so I had a community member reach out several times, and we talked about, she had some concerns. She lives in the community, and as our community is growing, she feels it's getting more and more confusing with the different speed limits throughout the village. There's 45, there's 35, there's 25. Some of the areas that she mentioned are not within our jurisdiction, but there were several that are. Examples of this would be Lincoln Road, Netherwood, Park Street, even up by our police department. I explained to her the reasons why those speed limits are different, and that she could certainly come here and talk about her thoughts on the mile per hour speed limit differences. And I also explained to her why there's sometimes a difference, that the community chooses to do that way. But she asked that I just bring this thought to all of you. I tried to get her here, but she just felt that it would be best if she could stay home and I would bring it up for her. So I told her, if anything, maybe just bringing her concerns about the confusion with the varied speed limits would be something that would resonate with you as you move forward and look at further development. So just relaying that information.
All right, Chief. All right, Mr. Brief.
Mine will be shorter than that. The construction did start today on the intersection of South Prairie Parkway and Janesville Street. So that is now blocked off in a north-south direction. We do have detour signs up, there's been maps put out and everything. There'll still be people that are trying to find their way, but hopefully in the next day or so, that'll kind of smooth out. About 30 days is what we're anticipating for closure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things. As you know, we're and that as well as Public Works helped me move 85 boxes over the day, so helping me get them to it. And I also want to hear about the police department, because today, we had a couple concerned residents that called in. And we just were a little concerned with the situation, already, regulations on top of it, help us out, we're all feeling comfortable, so.
Anybody else? Okay, 6F is Village Board comments. Anybody?
Oh, and we're sick of moving boxes.
All right, let's go to 7 then, communication miscellaneous business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 7A is approval of vouchers in the amount of $1,183,740.04. So I'll take a motion in a second to get that on the table. All right, Phil, give me a motion. Amanda? All right, questions? Anybody got any questions on the vouchers? Mike's got one.
Yeah, number 6,330 for fire capital equipment, what was that?
Our portion of the debt service or the capital purchases that are happening at the fire district.
Okay, so it wasn't for a specific item?
It's for whatever the fire district had in their budget that they're purchasing with it. That's our portion of it. I don't remember off the top of my head what it's all for. I don't know if Bill remembers if we purchased them this year or Gary. The one ambulance, yeah, so,
That was $30,000.
yeah, that was part of it.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? I do have one, Lisa. It's 2537. It's from Ellers, Dolan Mixed Use Development, 2,500. We haven't talked about Dolan in a long time.
Right.
We did some work with Allers and Dorn both in 2019 and in 2021 as another opportunity to kind of present where things were with projects and see if things were looking more viable at that point. Allers never billed us for that work they did for Dorn until recently. They were just cleaning up their fiscal year. Found that that had never been invoiced. We've been going back and forth with Tom Dorn regarding that outstanding invoice, so he's agreed to pay that, but initially we wanted to make sure that Allers costs were covered until we do get the shortly.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else? All right, Candy, we'll take a voice vote on this.
English,
Yes.
Van Campen,
Yes.
Devo,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Wong,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to 7D, which is 5-year repayment agreement with Landon Peace. Okay, Peace. For police officer employment costs, these are standard. We've seen it before, so, I'll take a motion in a second. Derek is first. Jenna, any discussion, any questions on this? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 7C is request to close the Oregon Area Senior Center on Friday, November 18th, 2022 at 1 o'clock p.m. for staff in service. Staff recommendation is to approve as presented. Take a motion in second. Amanda, and that's off Jenna's hand, pop up. Any discussion, any questions? Anybody? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 7D is review bids and consider awarding contracts for 2022 roadway maintenance. Staff recommendation, motion to accept the base bid, supplemental bid, and alternate bid for contract A of the 2022 roadway maintenance and improvement project, and award the contract for pulverizing and repaving, milling and repaving the storm sewer improvements to Payne and Doyle. Dolan, sorry. Martin, can we do it all at once? Okay. Let's do it all at once, and that's in the amount of $590,744.50. And to accept the base bid and alternate bid for contract B of the 2022 roadway maintenance and improvement project, and award the contract for crack filling and chip sealing to Farner Asphalt Sealers, LLC, in the amount of $139,731. So I'll take a motion in a second. Bill? Okay, Phil and Amanda. Anybody have any questions on these contracts? Okay, seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, and Randy, just a comment, if people are interested to see what roads are being done, there are maps in the packet that they should look up, and that tells exactly what maintenance work will be done this year.
All right, perfect. All right, 7E, consider a potential change order for additional pickleball courts in Phase 1, J.C. Park redevelopment project. Jeff, do you want to start us off? We'll have Mike come up after, maybe you can give us a little brief.
Right, so, you all have received an updated packet today. We basically, at the July 11th, July 11th Village Board meeting, Village Board authorized another $160,000 in the surplus funds to go to the pickleball courts. The action at that time was to work with Mike and Jerome and kind of finalizing a design for the courts, work with Rattler on that, and then submit that back to Fisher Excavating, which is the contractor, to seek the change order amount for that. What was added to the packet today was kind of the analysis on that. Some of the minor changes included adding some 4-foot fencing and some other modifying the fences a little bit higher to accommodate wind screens, and then just modifying the courts very slightly in the width. The change order, when it was actually courts was $178,458.03. The change order submitted in the proposal to be included in phase one would be $262,750.68, which is an increase of $84,257.65. Like we talked about that night, we weren't surprised to see numbers come in higher. I was surprised to see it come in as high as they did. The main impacts to the numbers were from mobilization and restoration of almost $16,000. Asphalt costs went up almost 29,000, so 28,832. And then the changing for fencing and gates came up $40,000 there. There's an option to remove the fencing, the 4-foot split fencing between the courts. That came with a deduct if we were interested of $18,732. Pickleball will be presenting kind of tonight. Mike met with us today to talk about some additional fundraising they have. The long and short of, depending on alternates chosen and everything, there's still a deficit of about $52,000 to $70,000. I added, for full transparency in this, the change order amount. You'll see a change order come through at our next village board meeting. Include a cost of $64,000 for 396 loads of concrete rubble that had to be removed from the park. That was buried in a berm. We thank our predecessors, are the ones who have gone before us in burying that stuff for us to find again. About $5,000 for minor utility modifications, and then there were some modifications to the VFW Memorial area that involved us adding quite a few more flagpoles that matched what we had in an agreement with the VFW that did not match the design. So all total, this amounts to just about $100,000 of changes to date on the JC Park. We're also working with Sketchworks Architecture in possible change to we have to value engineer the concession stand, which still has to be part of phase one, and hopefully get bid this fall is our plan. What we're looking at right now is actually taking away the second story, which would take away the architectural treatment to make it look like the Tin Man, which is fine. It's just, you look like a regular concession building. And we lose the second story, which was really just scorekeeping and some storage up there. But we still have to be able to accommodate those kind of costs in the overall project budget. I see you have a difficult proposal before you. I know pickleball's here tonight to talk to you about that. The village board made the decision to authorize $160,000 before, so I don't have any recommendation for you. I'll let you guys come up with that.
So Jeff, just to help us, tell us what is the, we're lacking? Final amount.
Well, the total cost is under the change order is $262,715. Pickleball, according to where it was when I wrote this memo, they raised in pledges and fundraising about $32,500. With the 160 committed from the village, it's $192,000. That would put them at a deficit of either $51,500 or $70,000. Now, there's been some additional pledges and stuff that Michael talked with you about, but that's where, based on my analysis, where it was.
Okay. Right. So, you may want to have a discussion, should we?
Question, Mike.
You have a question for Jeff?
Yeah, but
Okay.
gentlemen first.
Well, my question was in relationship to fencing, so I guess, I'm not sure if that's better for Jack or for the remote folks, but I was just curious about if the fencing was moved either permanently or for addition to a future phase, how does that affect
The fencing credit that the fencing contractor, in working with the pickleball folks, they've requested that some of the more professionally designed courts actually have fencing between the courts. And it's about a 4-foot high fence. And so, and then also we asked that there be some gates in between just to allow some motion, because not all of us can leap 4-foot high fences anymore. And myself included. And so that's the fencing we're talking about. There'd still be fencing around the pickleball courts.
Yeah, just be in between.
Just be in between, correct.
And so it doesn't necessarily affect gameplay though? Or
It
maybe
It really affects safety, not necessarily, well, it does affect gameplay, but let me talk about the safety aspect. The reason that as Jeff pointed out, the more professionally designed courts, and I wouldn't even say, because this is professionally designed, you have different degrees of court design, good, better, best, and excellent. This falls under the best, not quite excellent. And the reason they do that is a couple reasons. One is from a safety perspective. You have balls that can go back and forth between courts. You have people that are not watching the courts next to them. They're watching what's going on, and it's very easy to trip on a ball or, more importantly, step on a ball and twist an ankle. That can happen quite often. You will also see as the skill level of pickleball players goes up, it's not the same game as novice players that they're right in front of the net and hitting it. They'll be going around the post and they'll be doing different shots that more skilled players can do. So now you have players running into other courts, and that can be obviously a detriment in itself.
All right, so Mike, we'll get back to you, but unless Phil had a question for Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. You said that we've so far expended $100,000 for contingency, and
Yes, we've expended $100,000 above what we've already anticipated, yes.
And what is the total contingency?
Sorry, that question.
It's not critical,
Normally, we plan on 5%, and, on $3 million, it's $150,000.
well,
Yeah, but, as you know, your problems usually occur right off the bat, which is for base stabilization, soils, buried things, think concrete rubble, that type of stuff. You don't tend to find those too much in later portions of the project.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so Mike, you're gonna talk to the pickleball folks. Get your name and address, so we can get you on the record.
Okay.
And then you can go ahead.
All right, great. My name is Mike Barone, 631 Bergamont Boulevard. I'm sure you're all tired of seeing me up here again for about the 5th time this year. But thank you for letting me speak. Pickleball's here behind me. We got quite a few people. Obviously, you know the interest. I'm not going to backtrack into that. We have talked about the courts for quite a while. I just wanted to talk. Jeff did a great job of summarizing where we are with the cost and the added costs. I've gone through the line items. Jeff has shared the bids with me. I've gone through that too. There's some costs that I just don't understand, but Jeff is sorting through that. When you look at the costs on a per court basis, I think I actually know I wrote an email to the board a while back, and I brought it up in the meetings. The original bid put our courts at just under $30,000 per court, $29,700. At the time, I mentioned to you, that was a great price as compared to the other communities that are building courts right now. Sun Prairie just finished their courts up, 4 brand-new courts for a total of 10. Those courts averaged $56,000 a court. The McFarland folks are building 8 courts right now. They're averaging $55,600 a court. So even with our revised RFP price, the courts are averaging $43,785, which is still it brings it up into the neighborhood of where the other courts are, but it's still better than what we're seeing in the area. Pickleball has been in front of you many times, as I've said. The administrative staff and the village board have said we have to get out there and raise money. You dangled that carrot out there. We grabbed the carrot and we ran with it. In the last meeting, we committed to having $33,000 in donations. That included $25,500 of new donations plus the previous $7,500 in donations. So that brought it to $33,000. Since then, I went in front of the Economic Tourism Board here in Oregon and was awarded another $5,000 because we're going to bring in people, maybe some overnight stays. When you take the base price of the RFP, the $262,715, and you subtract the already approved village funds of $160, take our $33 off of that, and the additional $5,000, that leaves the bill to be paid at $64,715. Now, as Jeff said, we continue to raise money. You dangled the carrot, we're still grabbing at it, and we're still running with it. We raised another $15,000 since the last meeting. So we have a total now of $53,000 that we've raised, which is 21% of this project. Better than any other sports club has done. On top of that, Jeff had made mention about some gates. There are 10 4-foot gates in this design that we have. From a pickleball perspective, we only need 6 of those gates. The 4 that are within the realm of the playing field, we don't need. We can walk around to get into the other court. That's not a problem. Those gates are valued at $1,400 apiece. So now when you take the 4 gates at $1,400, that's another $5,600. We feel from the pickleball community we can save that money, and that brings the new total down to $44,115. So that's what I'm here asking for, the village to figure out somehow. I sat down with Martin today and Jeff. Randy and I have talked. They've laid out the proposal. For $44,000, we can get to where we need to be. I just want to talk about the other side of the coin, because there's also, in these past meetings, there's been talk about Phase 2. We can put pickleball in Phase 2. Just a couple thoughts about that. The money that we've raised, the $53,000, is all predicated, as I've said before, about moving forward in Phase 1 and getting these courts built this fall with the design we've talked about. If we wait until Phase 2, by the board's own admission, and it's on record, that we don't know the timing and we don't know the funding. So who knows when and if it's going to happen. The other thing is, let's say it does get approved for next year, you still have to bid it out. Inflation right now is at 9%, and it probably coming down a little bit, but who knows. We still have to bid that project out and competitively bid it, and you will probably bring the cost down a little bit. But then that side of the coin is you lost the $53,000 that pickleball has committed. And I really hate to do that because, like I said, you dangled the carrot and we're there. And you gave us a challenge. That's the integrity of the board. That's what you need to do. And we're there. And we grabbed it and we're running with it. So I'm here to ask to somehow, some way, come up with the $44,000. Let's sign the change order. I've got checks here I'm ready to turn over. I've got some other people going to think about donating. Let's get on with the process. Thank you.
So Mike and I did meet this morning, and I was honest with Mike. We're gonna get this money. We don't have it. Even if it's $44,000, we don't have the money. So I just wanted to be honest with him. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to take it from somebody else. We did the same thing when the library wanted to give $600,000. They could have used more, and we said no. Enough, that's enough. So let's have a discussion. But I'm not gonna. I don't know where it would come from, so I'm gonna say no. Yeah, Mike.
I actually am going to argue for yes. The reason I'm going to argue for yes is all tied up with Phase 2 of the project and the fact that the village has $70 million on our capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. And it seems to me like J.C. Park Phase 2 could be deferred without losing any playing fields if we provided the money for pickleball. And if we deferred Phase 2 until building costs come down and our debt service is more under control, I think it's the more fiscally responsible thing for us to do. $2.5 million of debt when interest rates are going up is going to be expensive. So if we defer Phase 2, the current site for Phase 2 has a playground and 2 soccer fields. The proposed Phase 2 would add a baseball field, it has a multi-use field, it has a soccer field, and a pickleball courts. All of those uses, with the exception of pickleball, can be accommodated in our other parks. And I'm going to be making a motion tonight to defer phase 2, and this to me is a component of making sure that the sports in our village have what they need, and yet we're fiscally responsible going forward.
All right. Yeah, Jenna?
Lisa, can you speak to, where that money might come from, the 40,000 to 45? Is that just the added to our borrowing?
Well, we've already done a borrowing for 2022, right, so I don't know where to get it from, to be honest. At this point, I don't know, everything is borrowed for a purpose, and it has to be used for that purpose, and we borrow the funds.
Right.
So, I don't know where it can come from.
Not to say we could add to our 2023 borrowing?
We're doing the project, we do this project this year, we're gonna have the cash now to be able to do the project. I don't know where, I mean, I think right now where we are is kind of where we were prior to making the decision for the 160,000, which is, I think the most efficient place to pull it from would be from the surplus fund balance that we produce from the general fund. Now that would take away from other projects that are in CIP that we have a list actually in this meeting. So we'll just have to figure out how we would fund those later projects in 2023, but that is where we can pull that from this year.
So, I guess, with that information, I am in favor also of keeping pickleball in phase 1. I am continually impressed how every time you all come the forefront, that you're like, and you fundraise more money. Like, it feels like a partnership to me as far as you wanting to spend, but you're not just asking us to do it all. You're working with the village board to try and come up with solutions that are going to be workable. Even the suggestion about the gate, we were talking about moving all the fencing, identifying something that we have built in that isn't necessarily needed on your part. I think is a good example of a partnership that's getting this to work. And I also think that when we're talking about investing in quality of life type projects in the village, that was part of what Jason Park is all about, getting more places for recreational activities like sports to happen in the village, and making sure that we have this project, which is clearly so important to so many of our residents. It seems like something we need to be working on.
Jenna, we would request that the gates remain in. That way there's always a secondary outlet out of that area.
Sure, and that's fine. I just like the fact that
Moving
it's
forward,
suggested.
Yeah, you should be considering this as you would require at least the gates to bring it back up to 49 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, I guess my point was more of that, if they're coming up with ideas to try and make this work.
Yep, exactly.
All right, who's up next? Yep, Amanda?
Yeah, I like the idea of keeping it in phase 1. Yeah, money's tight. I know it's hard to come up with money, it's hard to fundraise, and do all of that. So I really appreciate your working with us and to raise that money. It isn't like we're trying to throw money at something that isn't going to give back to the village. As Jenna was talking about, quality of life things do give back. There's a return on our investment. And yes, we're hurting right now. We're trying to build a lot that we'll reap the benefits of later. And I feel like if we push this to phase 2, it could be a long time before that happens. I don't think that's fair, because you guys are an active group and you're growing, and so I would say take that money from that fund. That's what it's for. I think this is an important thing, and you're here, you're doing the work. I see it paying off later.
Thank you.
So when you say the fund, do you mean the fund balance?
The fund balance.
So last time we met, we did ask the staff to give us a the list for the projects that we haven't done. And so we have we have that list now. And so what we're saying is, we're gonna take money away from that list. Okay, just so you know.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
we started out with, I think, like 330 in the fund balance. We committed 10,000 to the splash pad. Since our last meeting, did you then move that money into the CRP plan already? Is that where your hesitancy comes from?
Yeah, so for the CIP item tonight, there's a list of items that those funds we're proposing to be allocated to.
Right.
So if the board wanted to take, let's say 50,000, for first pickleball, we would just have to readjust funding sources for those projects, and most likely it would be that.
That, that's my hesitancy. I have to agree that, they've really gone on, really made an effort here. And if you think about, as Mike said, Mike Brown said, as a proportion, it's really stunning, I think, what they've put in. And I'm wary of taking money that the staff has taken on to commit to something else. And I think that if we do the diligence on our part, that we do is that we help them decide what's going to be cut, rather than just ask them to just cut. Given that parameter, then I'm willing to support this.
Yep, Jared?
I guess, looking at all this, I agree with what's been said so far. I'm willing to support, but I think that, given the fact that we are value engineering the concession stands and doing some, value engineering elsewhere within the village, that we get serious consideration to the deduction of the $18,000 for the proposed change order and remove the fencing and gates on that. I understand it's a safety concern, but that's, in my opinion, part of that sports is you kind of know what you're into when you get that playing. So we're gonna, and correct me if I'm wrong here, what I'm hearing is correct. We're at 49,000. If you take that 18,000, we'd be looking at about $31,000 in additional funding for this. So I would be, I guess, as we look at value engineering everything else, I like the idea of putting pickleball back in phase one, but I think it needs to also be on that value engineering bandwagon to a certain degree.
Jeff Randall, Mike, commented the practicalities of removing the fencing, or basically are we just removing the fact that the ball's going to go flying away?
From a maintenance standpoint, less fencing in the center is better for my staff and everything like that, but I understand where they're coming at for their design of their courts.
Yeah, when you look at the current designs now as pickleball is evolving, each court is fenced off for safety protocols. And that's very important, especially as you get the older clientele that's up there. And all the donations that have come in, the $53,000, is all predicated on the design that we've established with Jeff and Rettler. So I would highly recommend you don't take the fencing out. Jeff wants to keep the gates in. Certainly we can support that. That's $5,400. That's an opportunity there. But the fencing, we really feel strongly we've got to have that in there. And it makes sense to have that in there. We don't want to get anybody hurt, and that's always a possibility. And it's not good. So we would love to keep the fencing in there. That's what we need to do.
Thank you.
Amanda?
Yeah, can you explain how it's different from like tennis? I mean, tennis doesn't have gates between, I'm trying to wrap my head around why it's a safety issue for pickleball but not for tennis.
Well, a couple reasons. One is tennis courts are generally spread out a lot further apart. Okay. And there's a lot less traffic on a tennis court. When you look at a player per square foot, so to speak, the density is less than on a pickleball court. You've got a court that's 20 feet by 44 feet, and you've got 4 players on that court. A tennis court is probably double that, maybe triple. I don't really know. I'm not a tennis player. And there's a lot more distance between the courts. So when you go to Oak Street and you look at what we have over there, they've got 3 courts that's spread out that we can put at least 8 courts in back and forth. So there's the big difference. And you look at the way they're designing new courts nowadays, and even some of the ones that they've designed in the area that have not put the fences in there, you'll see the potential for a lot of problems.
Okay, thank you. I was not understanding the spatial constraints or how that worked, so.
All right, so I'm just gonna say, last time, I like pickleball, I like what you guys have done, stepped up. The problem that I have, and so I'm gonna vote no, is that taking away some of that money from other staff projects. So I'm not gonna say yes to it. And it's for that reason. I have nothing against pickleball and what you guys are trying to do, but that's kind of where I'm gonna stand tonight, so.
Randy, I have one comment.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I'd recommend, if any kind of motion that you do make, all the other sports organizations that have donated have actually just donated, and not with any strings attached or anything like that. What Mike has is pledges, and we talked about this today, that I would recommend any motion, if you do approve this, that any motion would have that those pledges are into Lisa and deposited, say, within a week of the approval of this. That way you can count on those funds that have been raised.
And if I can make a comment, I would say that that's fair. The only caveat, I've got 3-4 donors that they want to donate through their fund, but they have to go through I don't know what the step is that they have to go through to take the the tax advantage. And I don't know how long that takes, Martin and Lisa, but they're ready to go. And there's some major companies that have donated before. So I'm okay with a week to 10 days. I've got checks. By the end of the week, we can start turning checks over to Martin and Lisa and start getting the other people squared away with making the transfers that they need to make. And again, it's $49,000, almost $50,000 when you keep the gates in there. And with the design that we've talked about, we're going to have a very, very nice competitive court system there. And I guess in closing, if you think about what we've done in the park project and the quality of the facilities that we're putting in there, in particular, you look at baseball and the other athletic fields, and we've got drainage in there, and we've got sprinkler systems in there. We're doing things that when we were kids, we never had that type of thing. Those are top-notch fields. And we're doing the same thing for pickleball, trying to provide a very safe environment and a top-notch playing facility so people want to come here.
Yep, Jenna.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate the comment about the value engineering the fences, and I would normally say, yes, let's talk about that, but because it is a safety issue and because we do have a lot of seniors who play pickleball, I think we need to keep those in to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for the sport. So, otherwise I'd normally be like, yes.
So, Jeff, if one were to make a motion to accept the bid from Fisher Excavating, dated 7/28/22, without change, would that cover everything we've talked about tonight?
Can you say that again?
Sure. If we were to make a motion to accept the bid from Fisher Excavating in the packet 7/28/22.
Correct.
To that amount, would that cover our discussion? That is with the fencing and with the gates?
That is as designed with the
Okay,
fencing.
that's my motion.
Yeah.
With this caveat, and that is that checks that Mike has in his possession would be presented within a week. Those that cannot present that in that time would provide a letter of commitment to the village, okay? In lieu of the check, of course.
And Phil, so that's a motion, Phil?
It is.
Okay.
I would second that.
All right.
That includes the awarding of an extra 50,000 towards
Yeah.
the project from surplus funds?
Whatever the deficit might be, that is,
I would say 50,000.
yes, let's make it 50,000.
All right, and Jenna, you're seconding? Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I'm opposing. Okay. All right, we're on to 8. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very
We're done.
much.
Report of committees. 9 is unfinished business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 9A is review proposed community input survey for 249 North Main Street reuse opportunities and method for distribution. Anybody who wants to take this?
Finding it in my packet here. All right, so at the previous board meeting where the methodology was being discussed, there was a request, and I think an email since then, for the board to take a look at the survey to be mailed out to both the neighborhood and the community at large, the randomly selected group of about a third of our utility customer database. So we do have a draft of that survey included here in the packet. They're very similar questions to those that were asked at the workshop that many of you attended 2 weeks ago. So we can certainly review those. There's also some, I know, proposed language that Phil passed out in terms of just updating the cover sheet or kind of the explanation at the top of that survey. So that can be up for discussion in terms of if you all want to add or amend that language. Martin also included a map last week just to clarify the area, the neighborhood that would be included in that direct survey for those folks directly adjacent and across from the site. So that map is included as well. And then we can discuss the methodology if you like, but we've already sent the utility database to Vanderwall, so it's in an Excel sheet, so it will be randomly selected. We're making sure that we're not mailing copies to the village, since we own a lot of property, make sure we're not on there, and looking for repeats too, just to make sure we're making the best use of those folks that are gonna be surveyed. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Phil, you want to go, and then Amanda?
Yeah. Everyone got the handout?
Yeah.
And the opening statement language, it looks like I've changed a lot, but really what I changed it reads, the Village of Orion currently owns a 2.7 acre property. That makes it sound a lot like we've already paid for it. I'm not comfortable with that. I'd rather state that, as in my proposed replacement language, the Village of Oregon incurred debt to purchase the 2.7 acre property. Over the life of the term of the loan, the village will have paid $1.2 to acquire this land. That's my proposed change. I have another, unless you want to discuss that one first.
Okay. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I'm opposed to that unless we added terms that were likely to, the sale price will likely be less than half of that. I'm getting it back. I think what you have here is highly prejudicial and leads people to believe that they would recover $1.2 million in sale. And while I had no problem with the original survey, I certainly have a problem with this.
Okay, I would make a motion that the opening statement, current language, or the change to the Village of Oregon incurred debt to purchase a 2.7 acre property per the language in my handout.
Okay.
Motion?
Yep.
Second.
Amanda or Derek? Okay.
That's fine.
Discussion? Yep. Jenna?
I'll be voting against the change purely because that was not the language that was used when we had the listening session and the walkthrough, and I think we need to work to be consistent in all the avenues that we're trying to reach our community members.
All right. Yeah, Amanda?
Yeah, I'm not really a fan either. I mean, I don't think it's fair to be talking about all the interest and stuff you pay when people buy a house. They say, oh, this was the asking price, or this is what I paid. If I went around telling people what I actually paid for my house, they'd be like, oh, you overpaid. We just don't talk about land in those terms. And I feel like it's saying the 1.2 million is inflating the price. So we could say we paid $890,000, or we bought it for that amount. And we're still making payments on it or whatever, but the 1.2 million really bothers me.
Okay. My response to that is we just had a handout, we just discussed earlier tonight, that we're committed to pay for that property. And the total cost will be 1.2 million. So I don't really know what's misleading about that.
Well, like I said, that's not how people talk about land. We just don't. I mean, everybody pays interest on a purchase that you make payments on. And interest rates change, and I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just not a fan.
Well,
It's-
I guess my response to that would be, are you comfortable with saying that the Village of Oregon currently owns that property?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I
Well-
own my house, but I'm still making payments on it. Do
Okay.
I own it? I mean, I don't know. We're just, maybe it's hard. I don't know. I don't know the right answer here. I'm just saying, like,
I'm just trying to, there's certainly people in this village that think that that property has been paid for. In fact, someone actually presented to this board that it was paid for. And I'm trying to clear that up.
okay, fair, that's fair.
If you have other proposed language, I'm willing to listen to it, but I'm not comfortable by any means with the Village of Oregon currently owns. And to use your example, you may think you own your house, but if you only make a small down payment and you tried to sell it, sure, you'd find out shortly that the bank owns your house. And I think that's the situation here. We don't own that land, the bondholders own it.
All right. Jenna?
So the village did purchase the land, and unless it, like, when you buy a house, you do actually own that land, and then you sign a mortgage, which puts a lien on it for the
Right.
debt that you've incurred, but you do own that land outright. And
No.
you have to satisfy the lien before you sell it.
Right.
But you own that land. When you look at access Dane or something like that,
Yeah.
it would say your name, not your name and Bank of whatever. So you do actually, and I say that as somebody who has spent the majority of my career in the banking industry, and specifically with mortgages. You do actually own that piece of property. It is encumbered with a lien,
Right.
but you do own it. And so the village purchased this land, and that is a true statement that we do own it. It is also a true statement that we use debt to purchase that land, but that doesn't negate the fact that we own it.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, anybody else? Yeah, Derek?
I would say if that's the case, if we're thinking about changing the language of Phil's revision, I would almost say that the village has borrowed the $890,000 to acquire this land, as opposed to if everyone's not comfortable with the $1.2 million that we will ultimately pay for it. I would suggest that we just put what the original terms of sale were for it. I do take issue with the fact that we say that the village currently owns the 2.7 acre parcel, and ultimately, I think that to Mike's point about adding language in there about the potential sale price for the land without putting in any sort of request for proposals from any sort of developers, I don't think we can necessarily put that language in there because we have no idea who's willing to pay what for it. But I would say, as far as throwing it out for debate, putting the $890,000 that the village has committed or initially committed to paying for it as a compromise to the language.
Mike?
I think if you want to be fair, you need to include all the potential things that could offset the value of this property, which includes the fact likely developer of any affordable or senior housing or whatever else people want to put on that property will come to the village and request TIF money. We know how much TIF money can amount to. The fact that the sale price was likely inflated when the village bought it and will likely be less when we sell it, etc. I am comfortable with the language that's here. I am not comfortable with the language as Phil wants to add it. Phil had an opportunity to come to the workshop. He had an opportunity to go to the open house on the land. He chose not to do so. Changing in the middle of the game, the wording here, will leave half of the population of Oregon thinking the rug got pulled out from under their feet, and instead of a fair process, this will forever be looked at the board manipulating a vote.
Randy.
All right, yep.
That's a comment if you.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things. I think, the information that Martin presented with the history of the site and what was paid and everything, it hasn't just been presented, today. There was the background memo that was presented, the mega memo back in probably April or so. So that information has been out there. Another thing I just want to keep in mind, from my perspective, the purpose of this survey is to, again, ask similar questions to what were asked in the workshop. We're focusing a lot on land use and scale and potential uses of the property. Certainly the financial information is important to understand the history of the site and kind of where the finances stand, but I know just from other surveys that I've been involved in and written that it's really important to get to the point and make sure that you're using people's time wisely when you're asking them to do a survey. We likely will not get more than 25% of these back. So everything we can do to keep it short and sweet and clear, we could, perhaps one compromise is providing a link or some information on our homepage on the village website that is the memo that Martin just presented here. More information about the purchase history of the site can be found on our website. We have a link to the memo. If people want to find out more, they could read it there. I think that's really important information, again, to express, but on the survey itself, I just worry that we're going to end up splitting hairs and someone's going to kind of just, their eyes are going to glaze over as they're reading all of these numbers, and we're not going to really get the salient information that we want to get. We have no idea what someone's going to pay for it. We don't know when somebody might pay for it. All of those are kind of speculative numbers, but I think the information we said we wanted to get from the community is more on scale and design and use, and focusing on trying to get those responses out of this survey, I think, is what the board should be focused on.
In the interest of what Lisa said, I would withdraw my motion.
All right. Derek, you?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I'll throw out a different idea.
Well, let's
Go ahead.
finish. Let's
Okay,
finish.
so that motion is withdrawn?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So, as far as the opening statement in the current language, I would almost just propose that we remove about the first 10 words and change the at to the, so it would read the 249 North Main Street, the study area, see map on the last page, is conducting a community input survey to gather feedback on potential reuse opportunities for the site. This feedback will be used by village officials in determining the future use of the property. That excludes both the currently owns and the pricing, to shorten it to Elise's point, but kind of also doesn't, to Phil's point, make it look like we currently outright own it.
Second.
Okay.
So I'm gonna need you to
Clarification.
repeat that.
Yeah.
Right, and I have a just suggestion, Derek. So if we take the Village of Oregon out of that first sentence, I think people will wonder why we're asking about just this random address. So I think keeping that in there, maybe just the village is,
Okay, so
requesting feedback on property.
let me see if I can do this as we go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's,
let's-
I'll write it out while you
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
The 249 North Main Street site in the Village of Oregon, the study area, see map on last page.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry.
All right,
Is-
so let me repeat this back. The 249 North Main Street property in the Village of Oregon, the study area, okay?
And in parentheses, see map on last page.
Yep.
Is conducting a community input survey to gather feedback on potential reuse opportunities for the site. This
Period. Okay.
Yep, this feedback will be used by village officials in determining the future use of the property.
Future use of the property.
So,
Andy.
Well,
So let
hold
me
on.
read this back.
well, Candy, so the site itself It's not conducting a survey.
Right, that's
Can
awkward.
can I,
The Village of Oregon.
can I make a suggestion, Derek, and see if this meets your concern? The Village of Oregon is conducting a community input survey to gather feedback on potential reuse opportunities for the property at 249 North Main Street, the study area, see map on last page. This feedback will be used by village officials in determining the future of the property.
Wonderfully put. Thank you, Mike.
Is that,
So you send it to them.
so Phil did second that.
Yeah,
Phil, you
I'll
okay with
second-
that?
yeah, and that's exactly how I'd write it too. Well, Mike wrote it a little better, but.
Did you read that, Mike, or do you have it written out, or?
Well, I read it off of what's here. I just rearranged the wording.
I
Do you
can
wanna
write,
do it
I can
again?
write it out.
Okay.
I'll just send it to you.
Sorry.
Oh, we're discussing here. Hold- We have that in front of us. We know that. Yep. We're discussing here. So, Candy, what do you need?
He's gonna send it to me, so.
Well, we need a motion.
Yeah,
So
but,
do we have a motion on it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Derek's motion.
All right, and Phil
Derek's
second?
motion- Derek's motion, my second, as worded by Mike.
I think I got it. If you want me to read it aloud now?
Yeah,
or
why don't
later?
you?
Okay.
So we know.
The Village of Oregon is conducting a community input survey to gather feedback on the property, the 2.7 acre property at 249 North Main Street, to gather feedback on potential reuse opportunities for the site. And then the last sentence would remain the same.
I've almost got it sent to Candy, so just give me a second.
Okay. I think-
All right, so we got a motion and a second. Everybody's clear what we're voting on? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
What now?
Sorry.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at the other change on, or is this separate from question
Yeah.
5? Are we gonna do that
Well,
separately?
Yep, it's
Okay,
separate.
then-
Thanks,
Then
thanks,
fine,
so-
Okay.
let's continue. Sorry.
So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay.
So Phil, as long as you got the floor, do you wanna, well, let's see if there's anything from 1 to 4. Anybody have any changes that they wanna make? Questions 1 to 4. Phil's got one on 5. Anybody? Let's go right in order. All right, Phil? Number
Okay,
5.
Change number 5, I think it's pretty straightforward. I'd like to strike increasing the village tax base and replace that with marking to sell the property to reduce village debt.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we got a first, discussion. One thing since we're on 5, I want to just bring up one of the things I don't see in these questions, that we actually had a staff memo that talked about green space. I don't see green space mentioned in many of these questions. So like, example, G, 5G, providing new mixed-use opportunities, retail/commercial housing, or green space. I don't see that
What about
combination.
5A?
Yeah, but I want to see it all together.
Well, I think if people,
Oh, I see.
if the people prioritize, then they could indicate that they're interested in more than one of those.
Right, it's a ranking question.
Okay,
So it's
fine.
not a just select one
All right.
option there. There are
All right.
also, later in the survey, opportunities to select overall, if you're supportive of a mix of uses or one particular type of use on the property, so.
Yeah. Because one of the things that I've heard of people say, I like the idea of green space, and couldn't it be a combination of potentially some housing and commercial and green space together to use it? And so that's kind of what I was sort of looking for, and if you tell me you think it's there, that's fine, but,
I think maybe the retail and commercial and the retail/commercial and housing, that's like an example of mixed use. It doesn't it's not the only mixed use, so maybe we just need like an I.E. in front of it, or for example. Would that make sense? Just meaning mix more than one use for the property, but not necessarily retail and commercial.
Okay, so changing the wording on G to say, for example, retail, commercial, and housing, et cetera.
Right.
But it's not necessarily that particular.
People could
mix.
think of other mixed uses.
Okay.
All right, Phil, let's get back to you, because you had E. Did you already?
Right,
There is a motion on the
Okay.
floor.
Yeah.
There is a motion to, and
Motion and a second.
and a
Oh,
second.
so that-
And Phil, your change is to change it to market and sell the property.
To reduce village debt. right.
Okay, so
I
we have
believe we
a,
have a motion and a second.
we have a
right?
motion and a second.
Thank you.
Okay, on that one. Okay, let's finish that up.
Question
Yep.
for Elise. Elise, how does that change Vanderwall's stats and things that they're gathering from this if we change the question that much?
In terms of combining
Yeah.
the information from the workshop,
Yeah.
well, the
How would they
question,
handle that?
I mean, the questions of the workshop, obviously, there was a conversation about opportunities and challenges and all of that, so that summary of the workshop and the feedback honored there will be separate from the summary of the survey.
Okay.
So, everything that was captured there, questions were slightly different, the conversations were more in-depth, so that will still be captured, and then, this will just be, it's easily quantified because everyone's getting the same survey, so we'll just see a collation of all the responses.
All right, so let's deal with this motion in a second to change, to market and sell the property to reduce village debt. Okay? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay,
No one opposed.
no one opposed that one. All right, who's up next? Mike?
Looking at question number 6, I was wondering if it would make sense to change that question to be ordered by preference by, like, question number 5. Because I know when I added this was working on this question in the workshop, I myself was mightily challenged by the fact that actually I care about a number of things that are in here, but could only choose one of them. And I think we get better at data by preference ordering.
I think the question is worded so similarly to number 5 that if they were both ranking, I think they would kind of overlap quite a bit. It could also be asked as select your top 3 priorities, circle 3, or something, for example. It's asking
I don't
question
feel
5, I think, a
strongly,
little bit
so.
differently.
I said I don't feel strongly on this
Okay.
one, so.
All right. Was that it for you, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. Who else? Yep, Amanda?
Do we need to vote on the G, on question 5G, adding that IE, or like, making that an example of mixed use? Do we need a vote on that?
Yes.
If you want, it's pretty minor, but.
All right.
I just didn't know.
All right, so
Got it
Amanda,
written down.
Martin says yes, so
Okay.
why don't you make a motion then for that?
Okay, so I will make a motion to change question 5, answer G, to add the letters I dot E dot before retail/commercial, to
Okay.
indicate that that's one of several options. It's
Okay.
just an example. of
All right,
mixed use.
anybody want to second that? Okay, Jenna, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, who's next?
Did you get my email?
I did, thank you.
Does it make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a lot to keep track of, so you guys are giving me a run for my money tonight.
All right, is it Derek? Yeah.
I guess I just have a question for Elise on this. As far as the survey goes, where it says it's going to be mailed to 2 groups, neighbors directly adjacent and randomly selected. Because I know there was a lot of neighbors at the listening session. Are those results going to be separated out so you can look at them kind of as 2 separate buckets, or?
Yes,
Okay,
so,
thank you.
we'll also make sure that the randomly selected group does not include the folks in the neighborhood that are already gonna get a survey, so they won't be mailed 2 surveys, but yeah, we're planning on having them be 2 different colors paper, just to make sure that they don't get mixed up, but yeah, that'll be, summarized separately in the report that Vanderwall gives back to you.
Thank you.
Amanda?
Yeah, And another question too about the survey thing. Is it a third of households that it goes to, or people?
So it's utility customers, so it'll capture businesses and residents.
Okay.
So some might be renters, depending on if they pay their own water and sewer bills. Some don't. There's not a great way to capture all of the renters and all the individual apartments, but we went back and forth around different lists that we might have access to. We get a list from Alliant, for example, more people who rent pay for their own electricity, but it was too difficult to, it was the time frame that we have to try to get a list.
Yeah, I just am looking for clarification.
Yeah,
and
so it'll
all.
be anybody who pays the utility bill within the village.
So if two people's names are on it, though, there's only one survey? They have to fight over the answers?
One household or
Okay.
business survey, so someone will be
Okay.
designated or they'll fill it out together.
Okay.
Jenna?
In looking at the rental properties where there isn't multiple utility customers, where the landowner or property manager, maybe whoever is the one utility customer, did we map those areas out to make sure that there wasn't any one large area that isn't going to potentially have any representation in the survey?
It's randomly selected, so I'm not in charge of selecting the addresses, but I think they should be pretty widely, I mean, we don't have huge swaths of the village that are renters only. There are a couple developments that obviously have several dozen people in them. So in that case, you know, we're probably gonna get a third of those apartments as well, just in selecting a third of all of the utility pay customers around the village. Another opportunity people always have, and I've been getting forwarded comments from a couple of you that have been getting letters from anybody at any time can always send an email directly to me or any of you, and I'm collecting all of those together, and those will be sent to Manuel. So anybody that is worried that they're not gonna get a survey, or is a renter, or would just like to voice their opinion, that's certainly gonna be just sort of, you know, the open-ended response, that'll be included in the report as well.
I have one, if you look at right above 7, the directions there, it may be silly, but please select only one answer choice for each question. Anybody object to we just change that? Please select only one choice for each question. It just seemed odd. Please select only one answer choice for each question. Anybody have any problem with just getting rid of answer?
No, that makes sense.
So please select only one choice for each question.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have second thoughts on that.
It just seems seems strange.
It's, if I can jump in
Yeah.
here, as an editor, that's a common phrasing on
Is it?
tests. Yeah, I mean, it feels redundant
Yeah.
to a lot of people, but, I mean, it's widely understood to just mean one choice, but
That's fine.
it's common wording, unfortunately.
That's fine, forget it.
Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of tests, that's what I do.
All right, anybody else? Anything else? Yeah, Derek?
I just got I guess, question for my fellow trustees. As far as comfort level with the survey being mailed as to those two groups again, the neighbors directly adjacent to the property in particular, are we at all concerned that the majority of the people at the listening session, I mean, are neighbors of the property, and then they not only are filling out that survey, but they're also filling out the survey mailed to them as well, kind of getting, you know, almost twice the say in what the answers are going to be from the neighborhood?
They'll be segregated, won't they?
Again, they'll be separated, and it's obviously up to the board to use your discretion and understand that, you know, the people who came to that workshop are obviously more engaged than the average citizen, so you're gonna hear, you know, probably stronger opinions at an event like that than you're gonna hear. That's the purpose of doing that randomly selected survey. So I think when you all see the results, take them with a grain of salt, knowing that, the people in the neighborhood have a different investment and connection to the property than the village at large will, but that's why we'll keep them separate.
Just, still not 100% clear. Well, the data presented to us will be presented, here's some data from the workshop, here's some data from the survey.
Correct.
It won't be merged.
Right, so
Right.
the
So I think-
summary report will say, yep, here's the collection of information from the workshop.
Yeah.
Here's what the neighborhood survey said.
I think
Here's what the
that's what
community survey said. Here's email responses and letters and other
Yeah.
information, and then,
I think that addresses Derek's concern.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
that's the
Mike said,
plan.
I was just throwing it out there to see if anyone else had a concern about that.
Yeah, no, it was a good one.
All right, anything else? Martin, you want a motion on this?
Yeah, I would have a motion to authorize staff to proceed.
Proceed with the suggested changes?
Yep, and the
Okay.
methodology presented.
Okay, somebody want to make that? Phil and Mike? Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, we are, let's see where we're at here.
Police staffing.
74.
We're on 9, it looks like we're on 9B. Supplemental police staffing reimbursement agreement template. Staff recommendation motion to approve as presented. Chief, I think you've mentioned this to us. Do you want to just say one sentence?
Yes, briefly. A while back ago, the board directed myself and Attorney Dragney to draft a template agreement. This was on the heels of the local ice arena asking for an additional officer for some home games for the hockey team, which we are happy to accommodate. They do bring in big crowds for their home games, and it certainly is nice that if police assistance is needed there, we don't have to pull somebody off the road. Obviously, the agreement covers what the police department will do and then how payment comes about. So I did speak with Attorney Dragney, and just to be fiscally responsible with using his time, we moved forward trying to create a very generic contract because, I've already had several other organizations, businesses start talking to me about the possibility of officers helping out. Obviously, this is only when we're properly staffed and can accommodate, but you'll see in there that he's drafted that agreement.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, so I'll entertain a motion in a second to approve this template. All right, I'll see Amanda and Derek. Any other discussion on this? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, 9C. All right, we got a couple waives, first and second reading, so we'll do the waiving first. Let me just sort of read the ordinance. Charter Ordinance Number 2201, repealing the charter ordinance relating to the election and tenure of offices of village attorney, and repealing of a charter ordinance, Ordinance Number 30, relating to the selection of the village clerk and village treasurer, and the consolidation of the office of the village clerk and village treasurer, and adoption of a charter ordinance relating to the method of selection and tenure of the village clerk and village treasurer. So staff recommendation is motion to suspend the rules for the first and second, and then we'll take the ordinance. So let's do the
Move to suspend.
the waiving, okay? Any second? All right, Derek, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so let's take the change, let's do the ordinance number 2201. I'll take a motion for approval. Mike, take a second from Amanda. Any discussion on this one? Yeah, Mike.
So this is the last time that we will have to move to suspend the rules and not have to do a
Got
second.
one more.
One more next time.
Next one, Mike, not quite.
Just one more.
One more.
This is the
Forever.
charter ordinance,
Yeah.
so
All right.
we're
So,
gonna get into chapter 1 and 2.
yeah. All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So, Mike, we're not quite done. We got D. We're going to have to do a waiver on this one, too. Ordinance number 22-13, ordinance repealing and recreating chapters 1 and chapter 2 of the Village Code, creating Chapter 16 of the Village Code related to the administration of the cemetery, and repealing and recreating Chapter 26.09 of the Village Code related to the electronic preservation of records. Staff recommendation is to approve, suspend the rules, and approve. So let's do the suspension first. Mike, last time, you want it? All right.
Yeah, let's see.
All right.
Make some
All right, we
history here.
got one from Mike, and then a second, Amanda. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so then let's finish her up by approving ordinance number 22-13.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
it wasn't a issue with what we just passed, but just a comment on section 420, the 26.09, electronic preservation of records. Do we have a procedure for ensuring that our electronic records are kept in a readable format? So there's a history of, in computers, of us moving from one storage medium to the next and losing access to floppy drives and CD-ROMs. There are, I don't know how many databases that are still in FoxPro and things that are no longer supported, and the records do us no good if we don't migrate them at the appropriate times.
Yeah, generally speaking, they're all PDF format,
Okay.
so that's.
I think anything that we can preserve electronically, we do. But there probably are certain documents that are too delicate that we do not preserve electronically. We just preserve
We
them.
just preserve that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have a new vault to keep them in, too.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Amanda and Derek? Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Moving along to E, resolution number 22-28, adopting the village board handbook. Staff is recommending that we approve as presented. Why don't we get a motion and a second, get it on the table? All right, Amanda and Mike. Any discussion on this? We've talked about this. Okay. Anybody? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. On to F, continuing review of 2023 to 2032 capital improvement plan. Martin, do we want to say?
Yeah, I got a couple
Okay.
things. So this is continuing discussion. You guys have had this in front of you a couple times now. I would say the biggest change is Public Works Department putting forth a proposal for the use of the remaining ARPA funds. And so you can see those changes highlighted in yellow in your packet. We have approximately $618,000 in funds available from that. What they're proposing is to use that towards water and sewer infrastructure, specifically for Washington and State Street reconstruction projects. I know we kind of had, I guess, dueling comments at the last meeting where there was an interest in moving up some deferred projects, but also ways that we can spread some projects out. So this would be addressing some projects that have been deferred for a number of years and can potentially maybe find some efficiencies with doing it in parallel with the county's Janesville Street project next year. So you will see a little bit of a bump in moving these projects up to 2023 and using the ARPA funds. But that does help smooth out some of the expenses in 2024 and 2025. And the Public Works Department also pushed back some other street reconstruction projects that are listed in your packet. The other big thing, and we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the meeting with pickleball, but there was $164,000 remaining in the fund balance surplus. Obviously, if we're going to be putting $50,000 towards pickleball, we're going to need to readjust this. So I guess if there's any input on that, we take it. Otherwise, we can also go back and try to retool that. Most likely, whatever is left over, we'll just have to borrow in 2023 to cover those projects. The other thing that I highlighted in the memo was the use of our municipal room tax. So we collect room tax from the hotel and from Airbnbs as well. And so 70% of that is dedicated to the Tourism Commission by state law to use for tourism purposes. About 30% of it gets to be retained by the village. We have about 46,000 of that accumulated right now. Recommending using 20,000 of that towards the bike and pedestrian study that was put forth by Public Works. And if you read there, some good news, we were actually awarded that grant already from the DOT to do that study. So I'll give a lot of credit to Lauren. She did that grant application with some help from Village Hall staff as well. Yeah, good thing. So in the packet, as we've seen at the last meeting and meeting before, Ellers has calculated the impact on debt service. So with moving some of these projects around a little bit, there is a little bit of a reduction in what you've seen previously. I think we were reaching almost 78 to 79% of our debt limit. And so now that's reduced down to 76 at the peak in 2027. I think ideally we want to stay below that 75% mark. You know, there's a couple things working in our favor for that. The analysis from Ellers is very conservative in terms of growth. They're using 2% annual growth. We've averaged 7% annual growth over the last 5 years. And then there's a few projects that I noted in my memo: fiber service, the West Side Park. I know we can talk about the facilities projects. You know, if some of those things get extended out or are just not needed for example, the fiber service project, you know, that would just benefit, you know, the impact that you're seeing there in Ellers' analysis. So right now, Ellers is planning on coming to the August 15th meeting, which would be the next meeting, to present the financial management plan. If you recall, last year they came and presented that. It's a much more expanded, robust version of the analysis that you have in the packet. It covers the general fund, it covers the utilities, which you'll see the impact on the utility side for the first time. So that is the plan, and I think we want to wrap up the CIP shortly thereafter, so then we can move into the annual budget process in September.
All right, questions, comments? Yep, Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to defer Phase 2 of the J.C. Park project until 2024, when it can be reevaluated. I think we should wait until we see construction costs come down and have a better idea of our debt, until we commit to another $2.5 million on what was already a $4 million project. As I stated earlier, we have playing field alternatives, particularly now the pickleball. We've decided to go ahead with that in Phase 1. We have soccer fields, we have baseball diamonds, we have everything we need to go forward. They may not get sprinkled properly, they may not have drainage underneath them properly, but the fields are there and they're playable.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, discussion.
I think that's a big decision. I'm not against delaying necessarily, but I guess I'd want to know what exactly is in Phase 2, because I'd want to take a second look at that and figure out, you know, what's exactly is going to be done after Phase 1, and, you know, what would the park look like if it's set for a year after Phase 1. So I don't know if
Okay.
anyone can help with that. Like,
I don't.
there would be pickleball courts and a one-story concession stand ideally. And
Well, the one-story concession stand is part of Phase 1 anyways.
right, but so I mean, like, between, like, if we delayed it, what would the park look like during that time?
Phase 2 adds the 4th ball diamond. It finishes the 2nd playing field. It creates the playground, updates the badly needed upgrade to the playground out there. It also adds the adult exercise area and special needs, I'll call it special needs incorporation, amenities to the park area. And also adds lighting to the facilities and everything. Because that'll be the next request, quite honestly. We need our fields or courts lit.
Right.
And they will be back.
There would be, though, that multi-purpose field for soccer, lacrosse, whatever. Would that be done, or is that a later phase?
That would be done as well. There's only two phases. The whole reason we had to
okay.
break this into two phases is budget reasons.
Okay.
But that's been changed already.
Okay, yeah, Derek?
Just a question, Jeff, any chance we could pull up the map on the screen so we can actually see what we're talking about here?
So while he's doing that, Mike, can you restate your motion?
To defer Phase 2 of the J.C. Park project for reconsideration in 2024.
Okay, thank you.
So what's currently on that land, just so people know, is a playground, 2 soccer fields, a shelter that I believe is disappearing.
Those shelters stay.
Okay, so the shelter, a bathroom, 2 soccer fields, and a playground. And what that would be replaced with, in addition to lighting, is a soccer field, a multi-purpose use field, and a baseball field.
Okay, so this shows phase 2 right here. Phase 1 includes these 3 fields, these parking lots, this multi-use field, this parking lot, and the expansion. And, but was taken out with alternate was this area right here, which is the playground and adult exercise area, I guess would be the right term, flexibility and adult. This play field, and of course now you've added the pickleball courts back in here. And lighting. Well, phase 2 originally, originally there was space to be able to put more additional courts, which there might be. Phase 2 could be a few additional courts, not a whole nother 6 courts, but they could possibly fit some in over here. These trees will have to go and everything, but.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, Randy, it also involves the maintenance facility for all the equipment and materials that have to be stored out there.
Okay, yeah. Jen, do you have a question?
Yes. You had mentioned there was some accessibility items in phase 2. Is that specifically related to the playground?
To the playground. It's like sensory type of stuff. It's for people on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Sensory play area devices, like it's almost like a box. It's kind of like a.
It's called it was basically a chair that has
3 sides on it.
Yeah, it's more protected. There's fidget type devices. There's a fun name for it that I'm not remembering, but that was one feature. It would be the pour in place surfacing like we have at Helens and Netherwood, so accessible equipment, some pieces.
As well as accessible swings, accessible spin structure, and other things that we've been able to try to incorporate into those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Amanda?
Do we have a magic number that we come up with for the other sports groups to raise? Like if they didn't want to delay it a year, like if they came to us and said, hey, we raised $100,000 or whatever that number is, like that we could then put it back, could move it back up again? Do we have like a goal that we could hit? I don't know.
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's deal with this motion, unless there's any other. So the motion is to delay phase 2.
So I guess I'll comment again. I guess from my perspective, I'm going to vote no, not because I'm not interested in delaying it, but I feel like since the idea was just brought to me this morning, I'd like to
this evening. I'd like to sit with, have that information in front of me, to sit with it and really take some time to think through it before I make a decision to delay it. So I'll be voting no on this motion.
Yep, Phil?
What Jenna said.
Okay. All right, yep, Mike?
So, do we have an option to delay this motion until the 15th, or do we need this information by then?
You can table it.
Then I will withdraw my motion from the thing and give you time to think about it.
Thank you.
And you
The
can
other-
delay
the other
yours.
thing to think about too with this plan is, you do have decision points coming up too. I mean, even if you approve the CIP, you still have to go through and approve the debt, right? So at that point, you could say, no thanks.
Yeah.
So there are still opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
All right.
And that actual debt approval will be next February, or?
Well, the debt approval will be done during our budget process, which we'll be getting into all of those meetings in the month of October.
Yeah.
So it can be done at that time too. I mean,
But the final decision on the debt would be
Yeah.
then
Yes.
or in February?
Yeah,
Yep.
well, I mean, so,
yeah, we
Up until
started-
February, we could
Yeah.
change it, I guess.
yes,
Yeah.
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 Correct.
So there's plenty of time to
So we're
review it.
withdrawing?
Yep.
You are and you are
Yes.
too? Okay.
It's off the table, okay? All right, anything else on capital improvement plan? Are we ready to move on? Okay, let's go to 10, new business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 10A is future agenda items, gives the board members the opportunity to place items and new business on our future agenda for discussion.
Just rebooted.
Yep, Mike?
Yeah, certainly J.C. Park Phase 2, although I think that'll already be somehow on the future agenda. And then I would like to also place on the future agenda, having a discussion about how we intend to manage the art funds in the village and getting a permanent committee set up to manage the funds and recruitment of artists and things like that, so that the village moves forward transparently.
So Mike, just on that, we're working with staff and a couple artists just to sort of get a draft document of a call for art out to artists within the Dane County area. So we're going to be bringing that draft for review for the village board. Because we just signed the contract, and there's a time limit sort of on how much time we have for the grant. So we're going to be bringing a draft of, it's something that we would send out to artists saying, hey, are you interested in participating in some sculptures? And then we give them some parameters. And so we've been sort of working with staff and some artists, and that's coming back to us for review, just to sort of keep things sort of moving along.
So I know you've talked to me about bringing that to the September 12th meeting. So is that okay if we can kind of combine?
We
this
can
discussion?
combine them, but I really think we need to bring everything we're doing to the surface so that our citizens are aware of what's going on.
Is September 12th okay? So
September 12th is fine. We can make, and at that time, we can discuss, whether or not we need a permanent committee and
Yeah.
how things are juried and things like that.
Yeah, and Mike, I'll just sort of share with you, cities who have kind of this, they have a policy, and it tend to be 15, 20 pages, and it kind of lays out sort of
Yeah.
all that stuff, just to be transparent, how things
Right.
work. This is new to us, too. It's our
Yeah, I get
first
it.
time. Yeah. So, all right, anybody else have anything for future? All right, we'll take an adjournment. Amanda and then Jenna. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.